should we? Yes.
I agree with most of it. I had asked a question about the low-scale nodes and the medium-scale nodes and the height, and Lee gave us his suggested answers. But I'd like to have what I said, what I preferred in the minutes too. It's at the bottom of the front page, first page. Yep. He suggested the low-scale nodes are 2 to 3 stories, and I was hoping for 1 to 2. And the medium-scale nodes he suggested is 3 to 4, and I was hoping for 2 to 3.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anything else? All right. Since there are no others, we'll accept them and send them on to NYSERDA. All right, Lee, are you there?
I am here. But I'm going to let you guys go for this on your own. I'm listening in.
Okay. Dan?
So we've got 2 things we want to talk about tonight. We have the typology, the framework that we've talked about the last couple of weeks. You can pull that up. Again, kind of identifying different forms for each center, the traditional form and the suburban form, and then the different types of centers based on their contextual locations throughout the town. So we have centers that are larger scale, generally away from single-family residential, on larger and deeper lots. And here we think these are the appropriate places for buildings to be higher. Corridors, which as it says here, may or may not be near single-family residential, but they're generally along the larger roadways that we have, generally the commercial arterials, Niagara Falls Boulevard, Sheridan Drive, Transit Road. Medium scale node, these can be near single family residential or located at intersections. They have a moderate parcel depth, more compact in form. So we're talking about nodes now. These buildings are generally lower than what we find in the corridor or the center, for that matter. And then we have low-scale nodes, which are generally right adjacent to single-family residential, typically at intersections. Shallow lots. There we go. Right. Maybe it won't go too long. Shallow lots, more compact in form again, and these are where the buildings would generally be lowest. So this is what came out of the discussions we've had over the last several weeks, or several meetings rather. Any questions or conversation about these? And I'll Dal, if you want to. We're looking to probably endorse these to move forward. So.
We obviously noted what you suggested in the minutes, or in the notes, I should say. But I would think this is acceptable to everybody. We very well beat this to death at this point. Do we all agree to it?
Yeah.
We are? Okay, the majority shaking their head affirmatively, so we're in agreement.
Okay, Lee, did you want to say anything about the typologies? Anything else that might be add to the information we have, or any thoughts on this?
No, I think that most everybody now has the same thing in their heads for these. I know there remains the question of especially of height at the lower scale. I want to simply say that, when we get to the zoning, we can have a 2-story flavor and a 3-story flavor that implements the plan. There's not have to be only one implementing zone.
I think that's an important point, and I know we've wrestled with this a little bit. We've tried to shy away from being real specific about the height for each one of these because, as you just mentioned, when we get down to the actual zoning, we'll be able to fine-tune that a little bit more, and maybe that will address some of the concerns that you have, Ramona. Okay, so we're good to go with this. The next thing I guess we want to consider is the map of the centers and their designations. So using that typology and framework, the committee went ahead and tried to designate the commercial parcels that we have in the town, commercial and mixed-use centers that are designated on the comprehensive plan, primarily the commercial centers. And, yeah, so I don't want to get too bogged down with future current. So let's just go with this. So we're going to focus on the future one for the moment. And I think maybe the best way to do this is just determine whether or not anybody has any significant issues with the designations as we've identified those. So.
Yes, after reviewing it, I think there's 74, and out of the 74, I'd like to just revisit 5, and 5 of them, and you know, being a town board member, I know I'm going to have the opportunity to vote on this again when it comes in front of the town board, so I'd like to suggest things, you know, so I don't have to amend it at the town board table. I guess that's what I'm saying, to be upfront about it. The first two sort of go hand in hand, are 30 and 35, the ones along Main Street there, west of the 290. At the last meeting, by one vote, we had changed it from traditional low scale to traditional medium scale node. I'd like to see those two go back to the traditional low scale node.
So just
number 30, 30 and 35.
So which one? I don't have the map with me, so. Okay, the Eggertsville north side. So, and we did have a fair bit of discussion about this area. So, Ramona, again, I'm sorry.
30 and 35 was right by the 290 there.
Okay, so this is 30, I take it.
This is 30, that's
All right,
correct.
so this is Eggertsville, Main Street, Eggert Road, Key Bank Building, St. Benedict's Church, and for those of us of a certain generation, Ziggy's and Brunner's. I go across the street, sorry. Okay, so, Ramona, what your suggestion here was to take it?
We had it as a traditional low scale, both of them, and then by one vote we changed it to traditional medium scale node. And I'd like to see it go back to the low scale node.
Now we separate these from the north side, so you're talking about the north side. Is that right?
35,
30 is the north side.
is the main, my dad's 36 and 37.
Number 30, on the list is Eggertsville, Main, Eggertsville.
30, 30, right.
30 is in the north side. This is where the key center is, where Sacred Heart Academy is,
right
in there. Okay.
We had originally had them as traditional low scale, then we changed it by one vote to traditional medium scale.
We did. So the south side definitely has the lower scale node, right? And that wasn't in question, right?
Right.
Okay. It's the north side.
Right.
So.
What's the feeling of the group? Just have some conversation on it.
What would it be considered today as it exists?
Yeah.
I guess that's a good discussion to have, what do we consider today, but here's the next question, though. Well,
The next question is, if you've been reading the newspaper, you're seeing the Key Bank is consolidating operations, and as a matter of fact, they're going to vacate that building. So something is going to be done there eventually. So looking at what's going to happen in the future, we should start taking into consideration of what our thought process should be, is what should happen there. Should it be a low scale or a medium scale?
Ramona, your concern here is primarily about the height of the structures, correct? And it seemed to me the last discussion that we had about this, what was really driving that discussion was the height of the existing building. And I think maybe that's one of the considerations that we should revisit and say, if indeed that building were not there or that site would be redeveloped, would we want it redeveloped at that height, or would we want something at a lower scale than that?
I support the current designation of medium scale. I think what we have to do is be sensitive to the transition to the north, and we haven't even discussed transitioning and where we're going to look at transitioning within the code revision. So on a broader concept, I think the medium scale, given the vastness of developable land, makes sense, and we certainly can treat concerns for transitions to the lower height buildings to the north with proper transitioning. So that's what I have to say.
Anybody else?
I guess I really like comment, and I'll be quiet.
I think a lot of the input that we've been receiving, particularly from residents, is the concern here, particularly in the Main Street corridor, is the height of the buildings. Although the consultant is recommending higher buildings, I think we should take another look at this and make an educated decision in regard to what we really can accommodate that. And I'm thinking here in terms of the overall package that we have. I think that most of the pushback has been in this corridor, and I think that's something that we need to take into consideration when we look at the whole package.
Okay, any other comments? All right, remember, you're looking at what you want to see going forward, not what's there today, but what's going to be there going forward. Gary, do you have something?
Yes, the difference in the height is very close, especially if it's the difference between 2 and 3 or 3 and 4. Because we've talked about 2 different ranges, as Ramona mentioned earlier. But what's the bigger difference is the shape and the size of the parcel. And this one meets medium scale because it's moderate depth as opposed to shallow.
It's a big parcel. Okay, if there...
Gary, I think that's a good point, and I'd ask you all, if you can, think back to the charrette. This is one of those places that we modeled, and I think the consultants were able to reflect some of these concerns we have about transitions in the modeling that they did in the charrette, where the buildings got lower as they got back toward the single-family stuff that is adjacent to the north. If I could, is this coming through? I think one of the things that came out of that charrette, I happened to sit in on that particular one, is that you've got the church to the east and you've got the school to the west, and the feeling of something a little higher along Main Street and then transitioning down lower next to the residential area was pretty commonly felt as the way to handle this particular site. And I think you're not getting too out of line. I don't know if you want to go as high as the key bank is now, but you've got those other two tall buildings on either end of it. So carrying that feeling across along the main street seems to work pretty well in that area.
Thank you. Frank?
I think that major concern of you. I think the major concern of all the homeowners that I've spoken to is height. It constantly comes up. Anytime you talk about redevelopment, height is always the major issue. So I think it's something that we need to look at.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Working committee members. In favor of low scale, put your hand up, please. 1, 2, 3. Okay. In favor of medium scale, put your hands up. Medium scale prevails. Okay, next, Ramona, was number 35 at Main and Kensington, which was traditional low-scale node, and we decided that we were going to make that traditional medium-scale node. Comments?
This is both sides of the street that are incorporated in that designation. This area and this area.
Basic question, are we talking bonus low, definition of low and medium, or are we talking about the low and medium that was discussed in the minutes? Are we talking 3 and 4, or are we talking 1 and 2?
So we're talking about what was discussed in the notes. I did answer his question, and please do me a favor. When it's time for public comments, I would appreciate it, but right now, please hold it to yourself. Thank you. Any comments, any thoughts on this?
Excluding the north side, which is obviously development going anywhere anytime in the next 20 or 30 years at least, we're really talking mostly about the south side. And they are fairly large parcels. They're not shallow parcels by any stretch, but they are fairly large parcels. And I think, once again, where you have a parcel that's abutting or close to residential, there's another layer that we're going to get to where we can kind of address specific situations. But the size of the parcels and the existing buildings around them kind of suggest that it's our medium-scale node, but certainly, like I said, we can address height of any particular of these medium-scale nodes in a next round of layering of this comprehensive plan.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, working committee again. We'll take a vote. Those in favor of low-scale nodes, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And medium scale, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a tie. I guess I'll break the tie. At this point, I would tell you that right now, since I do get a vote, I would go traditional scale on there. Traditional medium scale, rather. Okay, Ramona, you have 3 more, I think.
I do. The next one is number 57. That's along Transit Road there in Dodge. We're looking at a suburban corridor, and Ransom Creek is coming in from Clarence there, and I have the concern about floodways. And right now on that stretch, you have like Russell's Tree Farm, you know, businesses along like that. Right. So basically, 57 is like between Smith and Dodge. And I think having it as a suburban corridor, although it may look like it should be that, but I am concerned about future height again there, especially when we have the creek coming in from Clarence into the Ransom Oaks area. Eventually you have Ransom Creek and Gott Creek and Black Creek and Hickory Creek all coming together up there, and I'm just concerned about any future more building right there between Smith and Dodge.
I think part of the conversation, I could be wrong in this, but I think part of the conversation on that particular area was because most of the parcels there are kind of shallow. And I think that's why the designation ended up corridor more than anything else. Am I right, Dan? Right.
Buildings are lower, but it's not a no. It's not considered a no. We probably have a lower density in some cases. So your recommendation is? Well,
I can understand why it's a corridor because it is shallow, maybe a traditional. I'm just worried about future height there because of the floodway and stuff.
But it's height. It's not necessarily the type or what it looks like so much as it is the height. The height is generally the same for those three types. So what I guess I hear you saying is it should be lower. It could be a corridor. It is a corridor. And you're not. And one of the things you talk about here is that there are some components there of the more traditional node. There have been, in fact, prior to the current comprehensive plan, for sure, identified that as more of a traditional node. So the concern is the height, not the form. What I'm hearing you say is your concern is not so much with the form or the height, but more in terms of the physiography of the area, the floodway, and the associated development limitations that would be there. That's correct?
Right, the floodway is there, if we want to put a 4-story whatever there.
I think one of the things that these typologies is really lacks one component which deals with what I'll call the physiology and physical characteristics of the sites.
On that point, I was going to suggest that, I'll give the microphone so I'm done, that I don't have any strong feelings either way on this one, but I'm not sure, and I want to make up and understand how height would impact floodway concerns, because actually you can build a one-story building that's got more roof and more drainage and takes up more site than a two-story building that's a smaller footprint. So I'm not sure that the height, for me, I don't understand how that correlates to impacts on floodway.
Well, I guess in my mind, height means more parking spaces. Okay, well, that's how I'm interpreting it, and this is not a parking space area. I mean, this is, maybe I'm describing it wrong, but I'm just, I'm concerned with future higher density there when it shouldn't be there.
You just said coverage is important here.
site coverage, I mean, that runoff from that site would be important in that specific area because of the physiology. Just for information, this is the floodway. The rest of this is the floodplain. This is the area that you're discussing.
I do think being near waterways deserves some special consideration, and height isn't just a tall thing to look at. It does imply more people, more pavement, more impact on the land. So to me, it's not just height alone. Height's kind of a marker for the fact that there would be more people coming and going, more of all the things that people bring with them and leave behind, so to speak.
Could we leave a comment on this discussion?
Lee, do you have any thoughts?
Can you both be right? So, in a sense, Ramona is right that a taller building typically, if it's surface park still, would cover more landscape with impervious surface. But keeping smaller buildings without controlling their own footprint, you might just generate just as big a one-story building, even with the smaller parking garage, all at one level. I'm not sure there's an absolute connection between those things. It could be that what needs to be done is for the regulations to be sensitive about stormwater for this site and perhaps some other sites. It's not a topic we've really talked about, but the standards could be different even in the same selected type of place. The standards could be different here than elsewhere in town if there's additional sensitivity. So I guess, I'm saying you're, sort of both right. We could turn out, all to be wrong because you could build a one-story building and structured parking for it. A lot of crazier things have been done. So, but we can control how much cover there is. We can control, through floor area, the total volume of the building. So we can control those kinds of things if we kind of understand what the performance measure is that we're trying to put in place, what we're trying to save.
I guess my question is, I don't know what we would change it to. Because if we change it to a medium scale node, it really doesn't fit that. It doesn't fit a null scale node either. And though all the reasons that you cited are valid concerns, and I think Ellen has valid concerns also, but I don't know who we change it to. We should remove it, period.
Yeah. Could I make a suggestion? It seems to be that Lee offered up a suggestion here that we include some provisions when he writes the code that deals with sites which are within the floodplain, that deal with the issues that Ellen and Ramona are concerned about. I think that can happen without changing the character of the development which is being proposed there.
If I can offer a comment, I could see it being a low-scale node. I mean, I think what we're not including is what happens on the east side. It's out of our jurisdiction, but when you get to Smith Road, you have that sense of a small-scale node. You know you're in Swarmsville. You see the church on the east side. I could see it being a small-scale node, even though it is along a corridor.
sense I'm getting is it's not about form or type. It's really about density and its effect on the surrounding environment. Is that really the essence of the issue?
There's been so much building here, taking up the floodplain over the last 30 years to the north, that these creeks back up into the homes in the area, along Dodge Road. And I'm just concerned about more future development, pardon me, that can affect flooding in the future.
Brian, I don't know if I'm catching off guard here. I don't know if you wanted to take a moment and just speak to some of the performance measures that we have in the code around the floodplain and the floodway, just so folks understand.
Sorry. Lee, this is Brian. Some of this will come out in the seeker process when we're going through the permit applications, but Dan just asked me what we were zoned now, and we have a lot of multiples in here. We have some MFR around the corner on French. I actually just had a Loma F for some structures that were put in recently. So we are getting some build out. That floodway line is going to be about the same in the proposed maps. But you know, I think Ramona's talking to the history and the designation of this, what, you know, where we're going forward in the next 20 to 30 years on how to address these issues. So I can't really see the map there. Is that all GB?
Yeah, it's all GB.
Okay. Well, that's a factor in our consideration. If we're at GB now and we want to change to a different node or corridor, you know, GB kind of fits that area right
GB
now.
is Swanville. I mean, we're talking a barber shop, you know, Russell's Tree Farm, you know, nothing, Stockman's.
Right.
There's nothing low done. Right.
Right.
Can you, I was wondering actually if you could explain the restrictions that we have in place now, i.e. what Lee had alluded to a moment ago, performance standards kind of things. What special characteristics or what special considerations are there in a floodplain, floodway now that builders or developers have to adhere to?
Okay, I don't know if everybody heard that, Dan's comments, but the restrictions we have in the floodplain now involve the town level floodplain development permit. Anything in the floodway is going to involve an hydraulic study attesting that you're not going to affect upstream or downstream properties. That's the intensity of that study develops on really the project. The floodplain development allows us to also address how the stormwater is going to be handled during this. So, you know, keeping the planning hat on, what do we think kind of fits here? I think we have enough restrictions on the build-out part of this. Existing ordinance that we want to keep, and also at the state level with the stormwater controls.
That's what's in place now. Lee, are there other things that might be considered in an area like this that you're aware of, in your experience?
the key thing, that's in everybody's minds lately for stormwater management is really just impervious cover, and then the triggers for whether stormwater controls are required for a project. So, if we had to manipulate any of those, we certainly could.
So is this an issue of performance measures and standards, or is it really a form and type of the development? I guess that's what I'm still not clear on the concern.
So I think there is absolutely no doubt you can engineer your way out of this problem. And you could set requirements to gold plate the engineering here and ensure there's not a drop of water left aside unless you're in something completely catastrophic. So you could do that. On the other hand, I think, some of what's being called for is where's the common sense balance here of not building in a place that requires you to, engineer that significantly. So, not knowing the particular site, not having any idea about the engineering up there really, and some of that, I would say, there's good reason to be cautious, but also to potentially set some specific standards that help the stormwater issue out by making sure we trigger stormwater for new projects, even if they're a small project, and simply let the cost of building there sort of help people manage the scale of what they're doing.
As folks know, that I'm also chair of the Tonawanda Creek Flood Mitigation Committee, and I'm always trying to look to mitigate the impact of when down at Tonawanda Creek. And that, yes, I'm concerned about storm events, but it's the flood events that happen at X amount of years. It could be 10 years, 15 years. When they do happen, they've been severe, in this area of town. And I just don't want to do anything that's going to add to the problem when the next event happens.
Would changing it to a low node make that much of a difference, that it would mitigate your fears? All right. Any other comments? Gary?
Because this is adjacent to Swarmville, number 58, would it help if it was traditional and not suburban? Does that form give us any more, for the same yield, more open space?
It would just depend. I mean, the suburban traditional thing is more about form. It's about setback and how it visits on the street and the transitions around it. It's not necessarily about the building envelope and the amount of development that would occur. So,
is it not? I mean, we're not looking at
I don't know.
design parameters yet. We're not getting that granular. This is simply about, if I'm mistaken, Lee, isn't it simply form? Daniel Wachowski, it's my understanding this is simply about form. The granular aspects of putting in performance standards is going to go to the next level. We're simply trying to define what form we want within these commercial areas. Is that not correct?
I think that's fair. Having said that, as we have described the suburban form, it has more just because we're describing deeper setbacks, more landscaping, etc. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's managing stormwater well. It's just the look.
I mean, the current development, retail, general business development along Transit Road is mostly suburban in form, and I'm not sure, because of that, I'm not sure switching this particular parcel to a form that requires the buildings right up on close to Transit Road makes sense. It's just, why treat it differently, you know? But I think I'm a little confused. Is right now the category of corridor indicates buildings are lower in height, and as does the low-scale node. So in both cases, we're talking about lower building heights. So what's the issue?
The issue, you have the hamlet of Swanville, which is not, you wouldn't consider suburban. You have the issue of the Ransom Creek coming in from Clarence, right there. There's the bridge there. And I'm concerned about higher density building in an area where it floods. And I'd like to mitigate any future flooding, or making it deeper, or whatever. Right now, there's a tree farm there. If the tree farm stayed there for the next 50 years, they would be great. But someday, Russell's may sell it, and people don't want to see on a two-lane road there. Transit Road is 2 lanes there, and that's 4.
But Russell could sell it today, and in the GB, we could have something more intensive now. And I think the discussion should solely focus in on form. Mm-hmm. If there's some concern about having impacts to environmental constraints, we build that into it as a performance standard within the zoning text. I mean, right now, I think we have to come to consensus on what form do we want this to take in 20 years. We can't rely on what is there now. We can use it in its context. It might be an extension of the Swarmville node. And unfortunately, I think we have to look to our neighbor to the east, because that's part of the context that we're in. Whether we say it's a corridor or node, I think the discussion should be simply, what form do we want in 20 years? And if there's some concerns for environmental impacts or constraints, we develop that as a performance standard, and we can even select this area as having a special performance standard. So I think we have to move on. It's in my opinion, this should be focusing on form right now.
I would think the folks would want it to look the same way in 20 years from now. We're talking Swanville here. We're talking people who have been there for 5-6 generations.
I agree, but we have to respect the rights that are inherent with the land that Russell's bought, for instance, or anyone else who bought land there. They have an inherent right to develop it in the GB. Right now, they could sell it in any land use that's permitted as a right. They have a legal right to establish that as long as they meet our standards. I think this is an opportunity for us to see what we should want it to look like in its form 20 years forward, and then down the road, we're going to build these constraints for this area. I mean, that's how zoning works. You list permitted uses as a right. The landowner has that to legally able to develop, and if you want to constrain those permitted uses, you do it with performance standards. I mean, we can't dictate, what's there now, but we could desire something in the future and try to build around it. But right now, I think this discussion's looking at something that's too granular. We're going to have to look at later down the road with text changes.
Okay, I think we've pretty much got...
Beaten that one to death.
Yeah. So at this point, let's do this. How many people would like to stay, again, working committee, how many people would like to see it stay in its current form as it is on suburban corridor?
As opposed to, are we talking
No, let's just, no, we're just talking about leaving it as it stands today. I'll get to the next point. How many would like to see it stay in as it is today?
corridor?
It's a suburban corridor. Okay, so, and how many would like to see it changed to small node, low-scale node?
Still suburban?
Yeah. But it would be low-scale, okay. The majority says low-scale.
Okay. Moving on to number 59, that's at Dodge and Hopkins. We had looked at that last time, and then I actually talked with some of the businesses there again, and when I said that we might have more height there, since it was across from Winslow North, they were like, maybe freaking out wasn't the right expression, but they said there's no parking now when everybody comes at certain times. And they were concerned about, again, having maybe possibly 3 stories there. So, but parking was the issue, if there's more height.
Comments? Discussion? 59 Hopkins and Dodge, it's now suburban, medium-scale node. And I would presume you would want to see the change to low-scale node?
Mm-hmm. Just from what I was hearing after I was talking to some of the different businesses in the...
If
parking was an issue.
If parking is the issue, then the market, to a degree, governs the type of development. If there's not going to be enough parking to support more than 3 stories, the developer would be crazy to build that, knowing that there's not going to be enough parking.
Ramona, I don't get over to the school as much now that my kids have graduated, so I have to ask for you to kind of refresh me. So, as I recall, you have the plaza there that runs along where Bocce's and things are. Then there's a former, I call it Sears hardware store that's on the south end. Now, and that was all part of it, one side. Is that hardware store now occupied? Is there something in there? Okay, because as I recall, the plaza up front can sometimes get congested for parking, but there was always a fair amount of parking in and around the old hardware store. So if you want to be right in front of the store you're going into, it was tight, but if you were willing to park down the other end, it was a little bit more room. Is that still the condition there?
There's some evenings when you can't find a parking spot anywhere along that, in those 2 parking lots there. And this is what they were concerned about.
All right, I just haven't been there recently enough to notice what's happening. So thank you for that.
Any more discussion? Okay.
I would support a low-scale node there. I mean...
All right, let's take a vote. How many people would like to see it stay medium scale node?
Conceptually, what's the difference between a low and a medium scale node on this? I mean, I think I'm going back to the initial change in the minutes and height. Okay, so what are we talking? Are we talking 1 to 2 versus 3 to 4, or what?
Yeah. Okay, so go back again. How many would like to see it stay suburban medium scale node? Okay. How many would like to see it change to suburban low scale node? Okay. There we go. Good job, Ramona.
All right, one more.
Okay.
Number 67, that's at Smith and Millersport. I looked at removing it the last time. I'd still like to look at removing it for the same. Again, Ransom Creek is still flowing, and then now it's up by number 67 here. And I still have the same concerns with floodway issues and just building there and knowing what Ransom Creek does, because it's getting closer to Tonawanda Creek here, and when it all backs up, it just backs up, and I have this intersection does flood. So again, the point again I made 2 or 3 weeks ago here at our last meeting is to remove 67.
Discussion?
My recollection of the TND district is that there's a certain set aside, in other words, an amount that the TND which would be in commercial use. And this particular polygon, which is shown here, represents that amount for this TND district. I would agree that this is the best place in the world for commercial development, but I'm not sure exactly how to address it. I'm not sure what we're doing here this evening or this whole process would result in some changes there. What might be the best solution for that is to change the TND designation.
I think there was a long discussion at the last go-around on this about that, and your point was to leave it as is without making some kind, would leave us some bigger jeopardy. And we were more concerned about the jeopardy going forward than we were about changing it. Am I correct?
I don't recall that specific conversation, but again, the only way to deal with this issue would be to change the TND district for particular zoning of this parcel of land.
This parcel was rezoned within the last 10, 12 years. It was shopping center. And at the time, there was discussion about potential location of the Walmart store there. So town rezoned it to TND. That's what it was. Some neighborhood development to lower the scale of whatever commercial activity might occur there. That's why you see that small polygon. It wouldn't necessarily develop the way it's drawn on the map, but it's a smaller area of commercial as compared to the rest of the parcel.
I think that was one of the leftovers from the Ransom Oaks zone. It was originally general business.
It was shopping center.
It was a shopping center.
We had this conversation last meeting.
Yeah.
And in the end, one point that Carl made was that there's not a lot of commercial area in that vicinity. And to take it, and I think that's, if I remember correctly, that's why we voted to keep it in as opposed to taking it out totally.
That's the Gary's point. Just this is the Ransom Oak area, and the plan went all the way up into here. A lot of that land that was previously developable and thought to be developed, perhaps commercially as part of the Ransom Oaks concept, is now designated wetlands. The green ones are state, right? And the lighter ones are fish and wildlife. The lighter ones are fish and wildlife. They don't have any regulatory constraints, but they are wetlands, and they tend to be an indicator of potential federal wetlands. So you kind of get an idea of what's available. This parcel, honestly, was one that stood out for a long time as not being affected by the wetlands. It was one of the only ones there that was. Most of the commercial zoning that existed over here along Transit Road and Northport Highway has obviously been designated as wetlands. So to your point here, there's not a big resource up there, commercially zoned land. This is probably one of those. Just for information, just so people have an understanding.
Is there active ag on the site, agricultural now? Is that north of?
The agriculture, generally the agriculture is along.
I'm just wondering if we can can you go back to the aerial photo for that? And just pan north. So I gotta believe that's gotta be ag, right? Along New Road.
Along Hopkins Road.
Okay.
Are you saying zone agriculture or is use?
I mean use, current use.
The agricultural use, correct me if I'm wrong, primarily along Hopkins Road.
Okay. I'm just looking at that big.
Your hand over that. That is the last parcel that the town purchased the development rights on. Right, that's the piece right there. On property. The other piece on the other side there, and this is getting kind of off the mark, that we're in the process of getting funds to update our agriculture preservation or farmland preservation plan.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we wanted to look at is parcels like that, which appear to be going back into agriculture.
I just think that T&D parcel makes sense to start transitioning. You know, if you're thinking about that area, that work area, what that parcel means to the rest of that open space. I think, like you said, Rick, rezoning it, down from T&D back to something with an ag use or something along those lines would make sense.
Well, that would make sense, but that's really not what we're here for tonight.
I know.
Okay, so let's get back.
I guess
to the
that's
topic
the
at
endorsement
hand.
of taking it away.
Right. Let's get back to the topic at hand. How many people are in favor of maintaining it on the list? Can I see a show of hands? And how many people are in favor of removing it from the list? Okay, so more people are in favor of removing from the list. So
Let's be clear. You're going to remove it from the list, but you're not changing the zoning. Right? So the zoning stands. Right? And this is your opportunity to influence what the zoning might be. So you can remove it from the list. So
Well,
I'm not going to change the zoning.
I mean,
There's nothing we can do about that.
but right, you don't have a center designation. What we're working with here, we don't have a recommendation to something that's less than on this. So, it's ultimately going to be up to the town board to deal with the zoning.
exactly. Okay. So the consensus is to remove it from the list. All right. Are there any others on this designations that we want to discuss? Because if not, we're going to accept it or we're going to move on. Any other concerns? Yes, Ellen.
I just had a question on number 46. There was a little discussion on that. Sorry.
Thank you. Number 46, which is adjacent to ECC at Main and Young's. We just had some discussion at in the technical working group, I think, on this particular spot. And right. And in terms of trying to create sort of more connectivity, multimodal connectivity as an opportunity near the college, and yes, there's a lot of green space there currently, and the buildings are more removed back, but that may change over time. That a traditional designation, it's also at an intersection, was an opportunity, but I see that there was a decision, I think, to keep it at suburban low scale, and I was just sort of interested in hearing sort of...
What would you be interested in doing with it?
I think we discussed and recommended traditional medium scale node to create a little... We had blue, yes. Thank you, Dave. Yes, I'm sorry, and to keeping with the traditional corridor, leading up to the village as well, but then stepping it up, in a traditional form, potentially at that intersection.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Brian?
Just to add to that, from my perspective with the village, what we're trying to do in terms of creating a multimodal corridor there, with this trolley system, I really think that's an area, that the village wouldn't mind seeing develop a little bit heavier traditional. So a traditional form for sure, but again, this is a village perspective, but traditional medium scale or greater, I think, makes sense. And we're talking about trying to connect ECC north back into the village, that area to the village, and there aren't a ton of parcels where I would say that would be the case, but that one makes sense to tie back to the village and tie back into what we've got happening adjacent to it.
Okay. Any other comments on that? If there are no other comments, let's take a vote on that. Yep. Go ahead, Carl.
For what it's worth, we've done a number of concept plans. 46 is the northwest corner, correct, of Main and Young's?
Yes.
Yeah, so that includes our property, and we've done a number of concept plans. The ones we're leaning toward at this point are more medical related because of some of the feedback we've received from potential clients and its proximity in particular to Millard Suburban. And the concepts that these healthcare firms prefer is more suburban in form than traditional, where the buildings are up close to the street.
nice to know. No, really, 46 currently is suburban, low-scale node. Kelly has talked about making a traditional medium-scale node, and that's still where we're at. Carl is saying that in trying to develop that area, he's seeing that suburban is more along what the potential clients are asking for. And probably wouldn't make an awful lot of difference to you if it were low scale or medium scale, would it, at this point? Node.
Well, again, the parking self-governs, that's going to drive the higher scale.
Mm-hmm.
So, even if it were medium scale, that doesn't necessarily mean you would go over 3 stories.
So it could be either or. Okay. Any other comments? Thoughts? If there are none, let's take a vote. Who would be in favor of leaving it as suburban low-scale node? 1, 2, 1. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? Who would be in favor of changing it to traditional medium-scale node? And Kelly, I guess you would be too, so that would be 2. Okay, that's right, you can't, you're on the other committee. And you can't either because you're on the other committee too, but that's okay. So we'll leave it as is then, it stays as is. All right, if there are no other comments, that we're in agreement on this and we're going to accept this. We're going to put you 2 guys on the same side of the table so you can talk to each other. All right, fellas.
We had one other one we wanted to, 2 others we wanted to verify. First one is along Harlem Road at Sheridan Drive and the 290. And this one, if you remember, we talked about this a fair bit. There's a 4 or 5 story building here adjacent to the highway, and then there's a 1 story plaza over here with kind of a moderate depth to it. We thought you might want to consider, and maybe we talked about this the last time, splitting this and taking a lower form and scale on this side and keeping this for a higher form of development as it stands today. Is there any interest in rethinking that?
So you want to take number 21 is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And you're talking about making it 2 instead of 1?
Right.
So you'd be doing the east side and the west side?
What was the designation we were doing? So this would be more this would be lower scale here, maybe low or medium scale. I think this is a little higher, right? And this has a high building on it now, and it's adjacent to the expressway. So I don't know if you're interested in entertaining that discussion or not. Let's throw it out there, and as staff, we kind of looked at it and wondered a little bit about it.
Currently, number 21 is suburban and traditional center. So,
I think that makes sense. That's too intense for going down the road. Suburban, medium scale, or lower scale.
so how many would be in favor of splitting into 2 so that the east side would have a different designation than the west side? In favor? The majority are in favor of splitting into 2. Okay? Wait a second, before you go to the next one, what's the east side gonna be and what's the west side gonna be? So the east side would be suburban center. And what would be the west side then?
You probably want to go medium. You have, really center designation across the street.
Yeah. So that would be a medium node. Okay, first of all, we are in favor of splitting the two. We already came to that determination. We agreed that the east side would stay as it is, and the west side would become, center, but it would be a medium node.
Any consideration for a traditional form on that side? I mean, well, we're gonna keep in traditional form?
No, I think it's suburban.
Okay, right now it's a suburban form. I would like to see the reverse happen here. I'd like to see that building pushed to the road. Then we can create a transition to the lower density single-family home to the west. Put parking in the rear, create a, vegetative breaks or visual breaks. Right now it's suburban.
I agree. I think you pull the buildings to the street and give the houses behind it some relief from the building.
Traditional center is what we decided on last meeting. I thought now we're talking about splitting that traditional center in half.
So it has a traditional form, so you're saying?
Yes, we decided on traditional form already.
Okay, so you just want to get traditional medium or low scale node on the west side. That's what I hear you saying, Dan?
Yeah, I would like to see traditional as
Yeah, it's gonna stay traditional. Yeah, it's gonna stay traditional. It's just a matter of whether it should be a medium or a small scale node. So how many are in favor of medium scale? It stays traditional. Medium scale, okay, and medium scale has it then. Okay, medium scale. And what was the other one?
The other one is, Haggard and Bailey.
Number 16, Haggard and Bailey.
So we're still talking traditional form. But, it was really the size of we took the entire, I think we took the entire intersection, pretty much over here. And gave it a little higher density. Right? Can you speak into a microphone? Okay, so right now, 16 is a traditional medium scale node, and the area adjacent to it, flip back here, is more traditional corridor. I think the question is whether it's really corridor or node, whether you really want to create a node there, or if you just want to maintain the corridor kind of flavor to it. And again, we're just looking at it. Just wanted to go back and make sure that folks were comfortable with that distinction at that intersection, creating a node. You don't have to entertain that idea at all. You can just kind of stay where you're at.
Any thoughts? How many people are in favor of letting it remain as designated? Okay, it stays the same. Okay, that's it. We're done now? This is what's going in. Lee, are you there?
I'm still here.
I think we're done with this.
I'm very proud of you, Joe.
Thanks, Lee, appreciate that. Lee, at this point on our agenda is that you are going to discuss the next steps and the products.
So we can give that a try. If I have a huge coughing fit, you'll just have to let me off the hook. We are going to take this piece that you guys have prepared. Staff is going to modify the map, and given the discussions that you had tonight, and make a final draft version of the map. And our firm will start in on the preparation of what we would consider the components of the plan amendment itself. Our hope is to bring that plan amendment back to you guys fairly soon. And along with that, then the assessment material that says whether these ideas from the plan can be achieved with the existing regulations. We know for the most part they cannot. And then what changes we would propose to make to those regulations to make them work for this new framework. So the assessment and the actual text and the map for the comprehensive plan are what we'll be working on next. Did I miss anything, Dan? No. And following that, then once we feel like we have a handle on the plan amendments, we'll be working on the actual zoning districts. And actually, if you recall, the contract includes reformatting and re-illustrating the full existing code as well as adding these new tools.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Now that the center designation has been gone through and we have finalized it, and it will be revised by staff within the next, and I say this reluctantly because I don't want to put time constraints on the staff, but within the next 10 days to 2 weeks, this will be available for public viewing. Okay. On your agenda, it says that the next... Okay. On the agenda says there will be a joint committee meeting on May 10th. We're not going to do that. But we are in discussion on the next meeting. It would normally be on the 24th of May. Lee will not be in town. He'll be in some exotic place. We're not quite sure, so we need him for the next meeting. So we have a decision to make, the 23rd, which is a Tuesday, or the 25th, which is a Thursday. That's a joint meeting. It's a joint meeting in May.
Sorry, are you saying there's no meeting on the 10th?
No meeting on the 10th.
Yes, there is.
We're not doing that, though.
No, there's a technical committee meeting on the 10th.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
The next meeting is this group.
Right. Technical committee is meeting on the 10th. Working committee is on the 23rd or 25th. Is there preferences to the Tuesday or to the Thursday? Okay, let's do it the easy way. Who's in favor of Tuesday the 23rd? Put your hand up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Brian, again, it's a joint meeting on the 23rd. No, it's not a joint meeting, it's a working committee meeting, I'm sorry. All right. So, I'm sorry, so I get a little screwed up there. Could you put your hands up again for Tuesday the 23rd? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for Thursday the 25th? No, you don't really care. Okay, it looks like it's Tuesday the 23rd.
So, one of the things I wanted to do is, rather than do this month by month, is just give you a sense of where we're going here. So, as Lee mentioned, they're going to be working some products here, the draft plan text and an assessment of zoning code. So, these two meetings in May with the technical committee first and then the working committee on the 23rd would be to consider those products that we'll receive from Code Studio. Following that, we'll have a joint meeting in June on the 14th. This is the date that we're looking at right now to jointly discuss that draft plan text and the zoning assessment. Once the committee is comfortable with those, assuming that they are, then those will be released for public consideration. And again, the map and the center designations you've been working on will be pushed out, and we'll spend July and August talking about those products with the community. And we're not quite sure how we're going to approach that just yet, but that'll be the time frame that we'll work that. And then in September, we'll have a joint meeting where we'll come back and report to you what we heard from the community and look for you to endorse the plan map, the plan text, and the zoning assessment. And then that information can be sent to the planning board for their consideration in the fall. In the meantime, Leah, you might want to weigh in on this a little bit. You guys, I know, will be working on the code, and we'll be working to push the code out in a draft form, probably to the planning board, to this committee and the planning board in the October, November time frame. Is that synced up with what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay. So there are some proposed dates here, and I don't know if you want to go through each one of them. That's probably not a good idea. We'll send this out to folks, and we'll try to get a sense of what your schedules look like. But these are the dates we'd like to work these particular issues and products through.
Give me a sense of what July and August is going to look like for public.
I wish I could. We haven't thought that far ahead yet. There will be what I think will probably be a few meetings around the town to present this information and get some feedback from folks around town on the products that we have available at that time.
And then, even after all of this is adopted, there'll be public hearings at the planning board meetings, and there'll also be public hearings at the board meetings.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions?
Just an observation. Since we've all spent the last year of our life working on this, and I was hoping to actually, as a town board member, to get to vote on this, it looks like the town board won't see it until 2018. Is that true?
Our little way.
We do expect, even if the meetings are held in January or February, that you're going to be there and you'll have an opinion on them, I'm sure. Listen, nobody's entitled more than the committee. I mean, everybody, as you said, has put a year into this already, so we're about ready to have some thoughts on it, which hopefully will start to gel. So, okay, public comment. Could you turn the microphone over to the... You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Anthony Marconi. I'd like to compliment Ramona for being tenacious on Main Street, hopefully keeping it to 1 and 2 stories. I don't know whether Main and Harlem is 1 or 2 or 2 or 3, and I'd like 1 and 2.
I don't know.
Main and Harlem.
Traditional scale.
Brian?
So that's 1 and 2.
Brian?
No. No. Okay. I don't know.
Well, go ahead. We'll answer your question.
Okay. And taking into consideration amendments to the comprehensive plan, I'm hoping to foster the growth of the idea of Main Street from Williamsville all the way down to Main and Bailey being designated historic preservation area, and noting that the only buildings that are higher than 2 stories are the public buildings and the schools and the churches, except for the East Glow building, hotel, and the Benchmark building. Foster the growth of that idea, taking into consideration specific design standards on any other redevelopment, proposed financial. We will work to propose financial incentives for redevelopment of the facades in those geographic areas, and further development. And I propose that from this day forward that all new buildings in these geographic areas be consistent with the proposed design codes. We don't want another Elmwood Avenue on our hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Marianne Hoshberg, 1075 North Forest. I just assume what you're doing is a guide moving forward. Thanks for all your work. But I just wonder, like, if it turns out that something you decided, I need to know if it's in stone. For example, the Key Bank building at, you know where it is. To me, it's already out of place. So what you suggested is, if it should come down, there'd be another 3 or 4 story building there, again, out of place. And if this is going to be in stone, the people who are surrounding there don't know they have an opportunity to make a difference until, you know, it presents itself, that they realize that it's coming down. So if this is in stone now, their opportunity has been taken away from them. They might not agree with you. They might think that's too big. I agree with this gentleman. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. 1, 2, 3. Saying parking should self-govern the height. But and maybe some similar text should be included. But when I went on the bus tour, and I believe it was the Key Bank site, it was proposed that the amount of parking would be less than what they were talking about, could handle, with the caveat that parking would kind of spill over into the neighborhoods, which is unacceptable. The last thing I want to know is, what's the escape hatch? If what you decided tonight isn't good, if someone feels that pulling buildings to the street is more urbanizing than being a suburban corridor. It's not fighting a rezoning. It's zoned what it is. What's the escape hatch to make a change then? Because things change even for whoever is sitting in the board or besides residents. All of you are doing the best you can using your Amherst imagination, but in the event that 10 years or 15 years from now what you is edicted tonight is not appropriate, how is that changed? What's the opportunity? And I believe that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Debbie Buckeye from the town board. I have a question and then a comment. And this is the first of your meetings that I've been to. I did attend the bus tour last summer, and I'm glad that I was able to come today to see the progress that has been made and all the work that has been done. But a question. Some concerns were raised by Ramona, and she brought up some valid concerns about Transit Road, Swarmsville area. And I wondered whether any research had been done by the planning department or by this committee about the other side of Transit Road, namely Clarence, Swarmville area. Has the committee or anyone looked at the zoning in that area, since we should be looking at our zoning and development from a context-sensitive perspective? Because if you're talking about what are we doing on our side of Transit Road, do we know what they're doing on the other side of Transit Road at this point in time? So I think that would be a question that if you have not looked at it yet, that might be something you should look at. And that is the comment. I just would like to say, and this is just a fact and it's just a comment, looking around the table, and I'm very keenly sensitive to this, having run for office a number of times and having served. There are only a very few female members who are policymakers in this group, and yet I see here all these people that are part of our group that are residents. There's 9 people sitting on this side of the table. 6 of them are female, myself included, although I am a town board member. So I think that, that there's this distinctive perspective, whether you're male or female, and I wish that, that would be taken into consideration as well. I think that's a valid concern, and I know how hard it is for women to break into policy-making roles, be it in the greater, Niagara Transit Authority or wherever it would be in some policy-making board. So, please keep that in mind. I think for this committee and for going forward for any other committees that might be formed in the future for the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Kim Uchek. I live over in Brookage Drive. I'm just wondering, when you do roll this out for comment, that you show what was somehow really clearly and what you proposed is, just so that residents can really see the change and how it's affected, and maybe the different changes that you did propose. Did you say it was like 64? 74 changes, that maybe, you take out some space in the B and list them, just so, the whole town can see what's going on. I know you guys have put a lot of work into it, but there's many people that don't even know that this is going on, and I'm sure, it'd be nice for everybody to take a look at it.
Thank you.
Hello, Thomas Frank, and I'd like to thank Ramona Popovich and Brian Culpa for the work that they've done, and that this project, looking at the Route 5 Main Street and the I-90 Interstate Thruway, as far as the infrastructure improvements, these should be a part of the comprehensive, all-inclusive master bicentennial plan for 2018. And that the Worley Drive transit to transit from transit to the western village of Williamsville is critical to this, as far as this commercial center corridor, and that as far as the what's very important has to do, and this was brought up as far as the northern part of the town of Amherst, as far as the stormwater control management, that the Ellicott Creek watershed tributary of the Tonawanda Creek, that it's a strategic geographic suburban geographic location in the town of Amherst. And this was brought up at yesterday's meeting of the IJC, the International Joint Commission. And the nice thing is that Brian got the resolution passed by the village, and that this is a long-term plan, that really the issues having to do with sustainability of water, all those PhDs that were at the meeting, as far as this is a binational treaty that goes back to 1909, it's scary. And this is, as I said, as far as Main Street, the strategic, as far as the Onondaga escarpment goes over to Canada, and it's where the Niagara River starts falling, that you're a part of this watershed. And really, we're all a part of it. We're made out of water. We're between 80 and 90% water is in you. And
Tom,
as far as what your
Tom, your time is up.
I just wanted to finish. As far as the Youngs Road, as far as the Erie Community College, the YMCA, the Ingram Micro, the financial there was a financial management firm that closed, and they're going to lay off some 60 employees on Worley Drive.
Okay, Tom. Your time is up, Tom. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for your participation tonight. I think we had some great conversation. Thank you. The next couple of meetings are going to be very important. If you can't make them for whatever reason, please either let myself know or let staff know, because we're going to be getting into actual text and conversations on the text. And some of the things that we talked about tonight that we can't clarify by this sheet that we've already decided on will have to be put into text so that we know what we're talking about when we have exceptions that come up. But I also want to point out something else, and the question was asked, okay, in the back of the room, and Dan can answer some of the other questions. Regardless of what's decided here tonight, nothing is ever in stone. The way the town is set up between the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, and the town board, there's more than one recourse to get something in front of people for reconsideration. What we're looking at here is trying to address what we think is going to happen over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Other groups have sat before us 20 years ago and tried to do the same thing. And to a large degree, they were successful, and to another different degree, they were not successful because other things came up that they never anticipated. So, although we're trying to make the best effort that we can to make sure that what we do is thoughtful, that we hear everybody that we can, and that's why there's going to be public hearings, and not only public hearings when it's held in July and August, but again, even when all this is passed before the planning board and before the town board, we want to make sure we get as much input as we can. We are sensitive to what's going on in the town. We're sensitive to what people have to say about what's going on, but nothing is ever in stone. There's always a recourse to get your point across. Do you want to address some of the other comments?
Really is not obvious for parents.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but
Yeah, you want to give her...
I don't know if you cut off public, but I still have something to say.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to, can you hear me? Do I need to leave?
You have to speak because...
well, we're recording if that's what.
Okay. Thank you very much. Alyssa Shields. Okay, Alyssa Shields, 17 Roman Lane. This is a little bit off topic, but I think that it fits. My question is smart infrastructure, specifically telecommunications, wireless telecommunications, master planning, any part of Imagine Amherst, and why is it not part of the master plan for the future? It should be. If you know that Verizon just wants to install a microcell in everybody's right of way, right behind their home, and then Blue Wireless will come in, and they'll want to do the same thing, and then Sprint, and whoever is next on the list, Cricket, whoever you can think of, and our code is way behind, and I think that we need to start dictating where we want wireless infrastructure to go, as opposed to the companies, Big Wireless, dictating where it goes. Everyone in this room at some point is going to be affected by small cell infrastructure. And it's happening today. It started last month. It's happening all over the town. It's happening all over the country. And we need to get in front of it. And that's why I bring it up tonight, because I think it should be considered as part of master planning for our future, for Amherst's future. I'll tell you that if our town looks like chickenpox, if you look over as an aerial, like a map of chickenpox all over the town, and there's a small cell behind every other house, who's going to want to live here? I think you need to plan. This is a beautiful town, and we need to preserve it and protect it and think of the next generation like you're trying to. We need to have a plan in place for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Rick, did you want to answer?
No, I have decided not to say anything. It was a statement, and I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Thank you. Sure.
I think about maybe a month, 2 months ago, we had a resolution the town board did to get a consultant, because we know that this is a problem, and we wanted to hire a telecommunication consultant to help us with the town code, to make it sure all the issues that you brought up, that we're addressing it. I see the town did it. The town board has not discussed that as of right now.
And the reason why we're not addressing it is we were given a grant to do this, and the grant was very specific as to what we cover, and it doesn't cover that. Okay. Anything else? If not, I think we're adjourned for the evening. Thank you. I'm sorry, which question?
Green in Harlem, what is it currently? What is the proposal?
Maine and Harlem is not even on the list.
I can't find enough